There we go. All right. Let's start with a blessing because we know that blessings will necessarily change our mindset and help us transition from one way of being to another. And the way of considerate introspection and brainstorming, that's a whole different part of our brains. And so the blessing, as we start it now, should have the goal of helping you turn off other parts of yourself so that you can be here, not just physically, but intellectually, and maybe even more than that. The blessing, again, I keep forgetting to put it on the screen, is la'asok b'divrei Torah, which means God helps us engage with words of teaching. So join me, or Amen. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher kidshanu b'mitzvotav v'tzivanu la'asok b'divrei. Amen. Looks like we've got another person online with us. I can't tell who that is. Let's see. Ellen's with us. There you are. Looks like she's in the car, so she's going to keep her video off because that would be very dangerous. All right, so we have been talking a little bit about the power of Judaism taken seriously and seen as an opportunity for that which we might not have realized we missed. Okay, just, yeah. That just occurred to me. When I get into a meeting, the first thing, because there's no one else on. The first thing I always do is turn off my self view, because otherwise I spend the whole time noticing myself in the little view of myself. All right. So what I want to do is share with you this beautiful little story that happened to me in the car the other day. As I was driving home from Sinai with my son, he just had a great program with Maura Erica talking about the war in Israel, and it was a profound conversation that I was not present for, but all the teens were really affected by what they had shared together. And on the way home, we were just talking in general about how things are going and how we're doing and how we're feeling. And our conversation turned to his bar mitzvah, which is around the corner, a couple weeks away. And we were talking about how he felt about it. And he said two things which I did not expect. The first was that for those of you who've been with us for B'nai Mitzvah here, there's a moment in the service where I have the kids stand at the ark with a prayer that's sort of pre-written, and it says a number of things. The first one is how proud I am of myself. The second is how I appreciate my community and my teachers and my parents and all of that. And the third part is a pledge about how I now take upon myself the mitzvah of Jewish learning, and I'm going to keep going with this whole thing. I always stop the kids at rehearsal midway through before the pledge, and I say, you're going to practice this, but then I want you to think about what you're saying. We're going to talk about it and see if you're comfortable saying it, because I tell them I don't make a kid say something they don't believe. So Amitai, having been to lots of B'nai Mitzvah, says to me, you know the part at the ark? Like, I don't really like that part. That doesn't speak to me. I said, oh, you want to just not do that part? And he said, we can do that? I said, yeah. He said, yeah, I guess I would rather not do that part. I said, do you want to write something else in its place for that moment? Something about how you're feeling at the moment? He said, maybe. And we started talking about the service itself and which pieces really spoke to him and which didn't. And after this conversation, again, you happen to know I only have 7 minutes from here to home. By the time we're getting close to home, he said, Abba, I'm so excited about my bar mitzvah. And I just did not expect to hear that. There's the new movie out. Did I tell you about this? The new movie is, it's called You Are So Not Invited to My Bat Mitzvah or something like that. And the only thing I didn't like about the movie was how excited she was about her bat mitzvah. That's the only, inaccurate piece that I've seen. And then my kid tells me how excited he is about his bar mitzvah. I've never really heard a kid say it in quite those words. And I share that story because it to me felt like a really great example of do-it-yourself Judaism. He found something that is a tradition, but doesn't speak to him, and didn't want to just go through an empty behavior without having thought it through, without engaging with it, without making it his own. And I just was so proud of himself. So we're going to play a little bit of a game. We're going to play a little, I'll call it Jewish Jeopardy, but not in the way you mean, or the way you think I mean. We're going to do this, playing around with that idea of the why. Oh, poor thing. Sorry, Moira. We're going to play around with the why again. We're just going to practice a little bit more. We're going to use some holidays as examples. I'm going to give you some examples of the what and the how. And what I want you to do is give me the answer or the question of what's the why? Why are we doing these examples of things? And I have a couple of fun little pictures to show you along the way. But we're going to start with Sukkot, okay? And what I'm going to do is just show you a couple of photos because they're fun that way. Where's my cursor? There it is. Okay, so we know that at Sukkot, we decorate our sukkah and we involve our children in it. We let them climb up on the ladder, something that they don't usually get to do. We give them power tools so that they can, drill and screw and cut and make it their own. We get them really involved. And then we set up outside the sukkah in the evenings. We set up a movie screen in the backyard, and we invite friends over to relax on the lawn and have a party at night during Sukkot to get them outdoors and make it fun. And then we give our, I'm going to say 7-year-old the power washer, and we make sure she sees that she missed a spot over here. And then I think I've got one more. And then it's time for night, and we create these little spaces of warmth and excitement, and it's totally different than anything they otherwise get to do. That's the what and the how. Now, give me the why. Why do I go through such effort to try to come up with all this stuff that's some of it traditional, most of it not so much? Yeah, Art.
Commemorate the time in the desert that the Jews were wandering.
Okay, so I am very curious whether people at home are able to hear what folks in the room say. We're trying a new sound setup. So Judy and Ellen, were you able to hear what Art just said?
Not fully.
Okay, I didn't think so, but it was worth a try. Art said, we do this so that they remember the time in the desert when our ancestors were wandering and did not have permanent homes with full protection. Yes, but that is the very traditional answer. That's what the rabbis of the Talmud would have told us is the why. And that's great. That is a piece of the why. I'm also asking, why does this guy do that with his kids?
To help them feel grateful and recognize how much they have once they go back inside. And recognize the shelter and the.
Good. Ellen, could you hear what Allison was just saying?
Yes, and I'm in agreement with what she said.
Oh, good. She's in agreement with you. So we're trying to instill in our kids a sense of appreciation and gratitude when they go back inside. Yes, and yes. What else? There's no single answer here.
Side of that even when you don't have much, and as long as you're together with your family and the people you love, you can make the best of kind of like a less than ideal camping situation.
Fabulous. So Natalie says we turn their attention towards something that they might not have appreciated in the same way, and really focus in on family or togetherness. That's great. Evgen?
Special tradition.
Great.
That you celebrate Sukkot this way.
Yep. Good. We're creating traditions that are going to speak to our celebration of the festival. Good. And I saw one more hand, Scott.
Nature.
Perfect. All of the, could you hear at home? To reinforce their connection between Judaism and nature. All of those. For a little while. Yeah. Oh, yeah. This past, not this Sukkot, the one before was the first one that we actually made it all the way through the night without somebody waking up and wandering back indoors. Usually I'm the only one left there in the morning. Julie locked the door, to be clear. So maybe that was why we were, so yeah, all of that is exactly right. And the other piece, which I think is closest to what Evgen said, that for me is really important, is that my kids are going to look back on the tradition of building sukkah with Abba and sleeping out there and having these parties and inviting people over. I want it to be fun. I want them to enjoy it, to look back on this experience and with positive energy. All right, let's keep going a little bit. All right, so we're going to go to Hanukkah. And here it's a little hard to tell. But we've got 3 Chanukiot here. There's one here, there's one there that he's working on, and there's another one up front here. And so we've got 3 Chanukiot. The kids are both allowed, I mean, at this point, it's not such a big deal, but they're both allowed to hold sticks with fire on it. I think I've got another picture here. Here's the last time Julie let me have a beard like that. Oh, I missed that beard. God, I loved that beard. So here we are. We're just, having lit it. I wonder who took the picture. I wonder if my parents are there or something. I think I've got one more photo. Yeah. Oh, and then this is one of the bring your own menorah evenings here at the temple. This is our big Temple Sinai Chanukiah, and then everyone brings their own menorah with them. All right. So we've got the what and the how. Menorahs, candles, gatherings. Tell me the why. All right. So Muriel says to illuminate, to shine light on the magnificence and the miracle of it all. Good.
Can I speak?
Yes, by all means, go ahead.
So this is much more mundane, but I brought my kids up in Greenwich. And one of the reasons that we really reinforce this is so that they would see it wasn't Christmas.
Yeah.
There's so much Christmas around. And it's a catch-22 because at the same time, I kept telling them that it's a minor holiday. It's not all that important, but I really wanted to reinforce that we were doing something else.
Yeah. So it is a piece of identifying ourselves against other mainstream elements of culture. It's interesting. I've had the conversation for the 4th time today about the experience of being isolated right now in the midst of this war and not knowing who out there around ourselves at school in one case and the workplace at another case, in the neighborhood in one case, who's sensitive to what we're going through, who understands our otherness, who sees us for who we are. And so going back up to these first 2, the tradition is we put the menorah in the front window, right? This is where we, if it's our tradition, this is where we, more or less take the Jewish star out from our shirt and hang it right there on the front of our chest. This is us outing ourselves, saying this is a Jewish house, which, by the way, is completely counter to what the conversos have done for 500 years, which is every Friday. Some of these families still today, since 1492, every Friday, they either reach out and close the shutters on their houses and light candles, or they go down to the basement and light candles and have no idea why they're doing it. The tradition behind why has been lost, for hundreds of years probably, but this is the opposite of that. Good. What else is the why? Evgen, go ahead.
In our house, we obviously celebrate Christmas because my husband's not Jewish, but I always told my children that Hanukkah was special because those people were fighting for their freedoms. And that was very important that they need to understand that.
I assume at home you weren't able to quite hear what Evgen was saying.
I can hear fine. I've heard
I
everybody.
could hear. I could hear her.
Wow. It works? Yeah, no kidding. Wow. Terrific. Well said. Helping us connect with realities that are not our own. Very good. Very good. Tamara, sorry.
Examples that you're also adding an element so that your children have a role to play that is special to them. You know, I find even on Shabbat, where, you know, we have 2 or maybe 3 candles, and it's always like, okay, who gets to light the candle? You know, you're passing it around, or you're, oh, no, you do it, but you know, they each have their own note, and the sukkah, they had a role, you know, so I think you're trying to also feel more responsible, but also that it's something that they can see themselves as part of because they're experiencing it more directly than just watching you do it.
That's great. Thank you for picking up on exactly the reason to have multiple Chanukkiot here. That's exactly right, because the fighting is just not worth it. And then the other piece, which I'll just mention, is when you get to, how did I miss that? There, when you get to the table, and this actually was one of our least well-attended BYOM evenings. Usually we have lots, I mean, maybe 3 times as many. And first of all, when the flames get going, everybody comments on the heat. It's remarkable. All these little tiny candles combined, and you can feel it, which, you know, there's a sermon right there. But every one of these Chanukkiot has a story. And so to let people kind of tell me about their story, to invite them to tell me, where'd you get this? This one looks old. Why do you have the whatever? There's always these interesting stories. So yes, people can tell you a bit more about their story. I'm going to go forward just a little bit more because we have way too much ground to cover. And I'm just going to do one more. Here we have a picture of somebody. Tashlich, excellent. We've got a group of Jews standing on the edge of a body of water. They've got breadcrumbs. You can see all the mess here along the shore. And you've got those greedy ducks who are just waiting for their chance. And then here we've got my daughter who is feeding a goat. Both of them from Tashlich. So we've got 2 different whats and hows here. We have a traditional tossing of breadcrumbs into the water, and we've got a non-traditional feeding of leaves to a goat. What's the why? Tell me about the why.
To start anew. We're getting rid of the old baggage, acknowledging it, starting fresh.
Yeah, starting a new page, letting go of that which you're ready to be done with. Yeah. And I'll tell you, when I brought the goats the first time, I didn't realize that it was going to be a failure until we were already in the midst of the experience. And here's the failure. Because we came down the hill last year, the goats didn't show up this year. We came down the hill and there were already a lot of people down there having a great time with goats. And I've got, I don't know, 200 or so kids and their parents coming down the hill with me from the service that we've just concluded. And they are beside themselves. I mean, you can't even breathe. And I never again got their attention to take any element of the spectacle of it all and to put any of the why back in. I had great intentionality behind this, but I wasn't able to communicate that or transfer it to others. So in my mind, this was a bit of a failure or a missed target. Yeah, Moira.
That, you know, for my kids, it wasn't so much so intellectual. It was more that we do it and it's fun.
Yeah.
Because they hated Hebrew school, and they hated going to temple and stuff like, I mean, in general, kind of complaining.
Yeah.
And so this was fun and it was about making memories. So I don't think that was a failure. They'll never forget that.
Thank you. Thank you. So Moira is trying to recover my sense of success. I could have put up bouncy houses and they would have had a blast.
They weren't bouncy houses, they were goats, and they know the goats are pretty unusual.
Yeah, yeah.
Feeding them
Right.
on holidays, so.
Right.
It's all mushed together, but
Yeah.
they're never gonna forget it.
They're not. Okay, I won't continue to flagellate, but and you're right. What I was wishing for is on that continuum of intellectualization. But one of the things that I pride myself on is being able to deliver experiences with depth and participatory, visceral understanding without overly intellectualizing. So I would have liked the chance to have everybody shut up for just a minute so that I could help them see what's the goat all about. There were little bits that I wanted to lay over the experience so that all the rest of this would have happened just as it did, but at least they would have had that sense of how does this connect to Tashlich?
90% of them weren't wondering how it connected to Tashlich.
Yeah, great. Okay, so one more observation. What I'm demonstrating for you right now is what do-it-yourself Judaism looks like for me in my relationship to the congregation. I'm looking at the why. Why do we do this? We want to have some way to achieve what Muriel said. And we have a situation where we don't have any water because it was a drought. And we have a lot of the Jewish community who have long since packaged away their expectations of what Judaism is. And if I can shock them with something that is new and fun and weird, if I can do it with some tradition and some connection to the meaning, the why, then I've hit a home run. And I almost, again, I'm not flagellating. Muriel, go ahead.
So very often we go through these things and we ask the why after, expecting them to be able to draw conclusions. Perhaps it might be good before the experience to sort of get their minds thinking why we're doing this. So even though you came down and you saw a lot of other people, they would have understood better than anybody else was there.
I'll come back to that in half a second. I see Allison and Tamara.
Never experienced conflict before last year, and I knew exactly why we were doing it, and so did my kids.
Great.
And I think we probably talked about it in the car on the way home. And so I think it's there. And for at least for those of us who came down the hill with you, and I think your memory, I'm challenging that, like, the memory, just because it didn't go exactly, this is DIY Judaism too, right?
Yep.
Just because it didn't go exactly as you planned, didn't mean that it wasn't valuable or that people didn't get it. So I found it actually very meaningful. I love goats also, but I think.
Thank you. That's great.
Yeah.
I really appreciate that.
If I can share that, I totally understood what the goats were. Where I think the missed opportunity was this year, where the goats didn't show up. And so as a whole congregation, not just you, we were all like, oh, then I guess we can't do Tashlich.
Yeah.
I think what could have happened is we would have said, you know what? The goats are just a physical vehicle, but here's what we're gonna do. We're all gonna gather in a circle, we're all gonna close our eyes, we're gonna think of what we wanted to give to that goat, and we're just gonna let it go, or something, because I think we then got stuck on, I need a goat. Right, and therefore the goat didn't show up, we can't do anything, and I left that service feeling like, so we don't get to get rid of our sins, like nothing, and so that's where I felt actually that we all let ourselves down on that. That's where I felt.
Yeah, thank you. I appreciate that. Thank you. Rather than, yep. Rather than spend more time on this, I'm gonna I'm going to roll forward. And I really appreciate the observations I just heard. All of them. Thank you. No.
I have a question.
Oh, sure.
This conversation's focused on the goats. I've never experienced Tashlik, period.
Mhm.
What in the past of the Temple Sinai, when you did a more traditional, did people come? Was it effective? Did it mean anything? Separate from the goats?
So I don't know if it meant anything, but this is from a few years back. We used to go down the road to the nature center, and we'd stand on the edge of their pond and toss the breadcrumbs. And I think it was clear what we were doing. It was a much smaller group. This meant everyone had to get in their cars and drive over to the nature center. So we lost lots of people there. After this, we started doing it right across the street. Hey, Ellen. And right after the service ends here, we'd all walk right out the building, right across the street, and do the same thing. Yeah, I think that the symbolism is there. I think they understood the concept of assigning your sins or your baggage or your whatever that you're ready to be done with, and casting it away. I forgot, by the way, I have the resource page with notes on it. Would anyone like to have a copy now to take some notes on here? I think I may have more people in the room than I expected. Okay.
Rabbi, can I just say, if you've ever been on the Lower East Side, for example, when Tashlik is happening, huge numbers of people are heading towards the East River. It's really quite amazing to see.
Wow. Oh, yeah, I bet. Oh, that's terrific. That's terrific. Okay, so here's what I want to do next. We've run out of copies. Okay. I already did email it, and I can resend it again. Looks like we got enough. Are we okay? Great. Okay. So what I want to do is show you a couple of examples of elements that exist in our tradition, but that I've heard of in new ways. In other words, we've got some powerful moments on the life cycle path that we already have great ritual for, but we also have other moments that haven't been properly developed. And if a person is being honest about their why, that I'm feeling something powerful now, and I'm looking for a way to name it, to process it, both with my body and with my brain, then some of these examples might interest you. So the ones that we have really pretty well developed, though not sufficiently, would include birth. We've got all kinds of things that go along with the birth rituals. B'nai mitzvah, constantly trying to rewrite how that works. I was just sitting with a kid in my study, and I was asking her how she's feeling, and she's like, pretty excited. I mean, I've been working all these years towards this goal. It was always about getting to the bat mitzvah. And I said, oh, I'm glad to hear you're excited, but that means we have really failed at talking to you about what this is meant to be. She was talking in terms of it being the end. I did it. And I think I was able to recover that a little bit. But B'nai mitzvah is another big moment. Wedding, we've got lots of rituals around the wedding, but most of them are focused on the bride and groom. We don't have a whole lot of rituals laying around for what parents experience. Some of you are familiar with the Mazinka.
When your last child married and you get a crown of flowers on your head, or at least that's what happened with my in-laws.
Yes, it's usually, well, in a traditional world, it's your last daughter. So when your last daughter is married off at the ceremony, there's a special dance called the Mazinka. And I've never actually seen it. I've not heard the tradition of the flowers, but there's usually a broom involved. I don't know how it's used, but it's like sweeping off the floor somehow. You're done. Your job as a parent is finally.
And with the crowns on their head and people danced all around.
It sounds like the same thing. Yep. But that's an example of acknowledging the experience of the parents, right? In the midst of everything else going on here, That's where our ancestors, that's not in the Torah, our ancestors said, these parents are feeling something huge. Let's create a ritual for them. I love that. I love that. Similarly, I get this from parents who have 2 or 3, or well, I have my first 4th kid coming up in another year or so for B'nai Mitzvah. They get to the final kid and they're like, oh, I'm so glad to be done with this portion of my life, right? Or when kids are graduating from college, we're thinking about how they're just excited about the next chapter. But many of you know what it feels like to finally be done with paying for college, right? I've been saving for my kids' college for 13 years. I still got 5 more years to go before it even starts drawing off the money that I've tried saving. When they're both out, oh my God, I'm buying a boat. What is that? No, Russia, that's true. So I want to talk for a minute about divorce. Okay. So there's a book on my shelf that I have not read. I just love the title. And the title of the book is Divorce is a Mitzvah. Because sometimes people are in relationships that they should not be in, and they need to get out. And it's hard to summon the strength and the circumstance that allows you to do that. And sometimes when it comes to a close, both folks are ready for the next amazing chapter of life. And I want to show you an example of something that is an option. What do you know about traditional methods of divorce in Judaism? What do you know? Tell me what we use, what it looks like, how it works. What are the problems? Tamara?
In an Orthodox relationship, the man has to approve and you have to get a get.
Correct. A get.
A get.
So a get is an official writ of divorce. It's written by a scribe on parchment. And the mechanism is such that you can use an agent, doesn't have to be the man himself, but there is a ritual where a woman puts out her hands like this, and the get is dropped into her hands, and she takes possession of it. And with that, the marriage is officially dissolved. There's one more ritual that goes along with this. Anyone familiar with it?
The husband had to articulate, I divorce you, or that's the.
I mean, you can use that is what's in the get, and you're right. It can be articulated as well. Maybe it has to be. I don't know. This is not our tradition, but the other piece which goes along with this is taking the ketubah and tearing it in half. Someone at home familiar with that part?
Didn't know that.
So there are a lot of problems with this mechanism from a progressive point of view. The primary problem would be the power of the male disproportionate to the female. And without going into a lecture about the problem of agunot, or chained women whose husbands refuse to give them a get. They haven't lived together for 30 years, but she can't get remarried because then her children would be mamzerim, they'd be bastards. There's no mechanism in Orthodoxy, none, to force the man to give a get. That's problematic. And the conservative world has come up with a very clever line that they've added to the traditional ketubah that protects the woman in a case like that. It's called Lieberman clause, but don't worry about that. The Reform world approaches things very differently. We don't use the traditional language of the ketubah very often. I've only used the traditional Aramaic a couple of times, and I insist on the Lieberman clause when I do. So since we don't use the traditional language anyway, we have something that we created called a Tudat Freda, a document of separation. And I'm going to show it to you. It's amazing. It's a beautiful do-it-yourself Judaism kind of approach, saying we see a why. The why is that when a marriage comes to an end, we need something to ritually mark that. Not everybody, in fact, not most cases, but in situations where a couple has decided it's time and can work through the process in some degree together, sometimes I convince them to go through this process. So it's done in Hebrew and English here in the middle. It says this document was signed on this day of in the year of 2023 here in the city of Stamford, Connecticut. And on this side, there are signatures for the male, the female, 2 witnesses, and the rabbi, Hebrew and English. And in the middle here, it says, we've consented to the termination of this marriage. This document, duly signed and witnessed, marks the dissolution of their marriage. Separate parts, also signed witness, have been given to the individuals. So then on either side is the same version, but it says that I, so-and-so, release my former wife, so-and-so, from the sacred bonds that held us together. She is free and responsible for her life, just as I am free and responsible for my life. And then similarly, signed by witnesses and the individual, and then it's perforated, and we tear it apart, and we tear it apart, and we hand them back and forth to each other as a ritual to say, we were married under Jewish auspices with Jewish traditions that spoke Jewish words and Jewish values. We're going to end the marriage in the same way. So this is a nice example of what, of a why, rather a how that responded to a why that wasn't really addressed in our tradition until the CCAR.
What's it called?
Well, this is in place of a get. So it's called a tudat freda, a document or a writ of separation. All right. Questions, observations, clarifications? Good.
What's the new versary that's on?
So this is another one I heard about just recently on the anniversary of her divorce. One of our friends said, I'm going to celebrate my first newversary. 1 year after her marriage came to a legal close. She didn't do this thing with me, but she invited friends over to celebrate her newversary. How great is that? She had a why. 1 year. 1 year since I've been married. I was married for, I don't know how many years, a couple decades, I know. They have adult children. 1 year as an unmarried woman. I want to mark that. A significant year, a lot of struggle and joy and loneliness and all kinds of things happening for her. Let's mark a newversary.
It's just 1 year.
I don't know. No, I don't know. We'll see what she does next year. And I can't say it's typically. This is a great example of a DIY expression. It's not a tradition. I don't know of anyone else who's ever celebrated a newversary. She may have come up with that all by herself. So I don't know what she'll do next year.
Sense there's a lot of adjustment and growth, maybe getting over the regret, and that it makes a lot of sense.
Yeah. And next year, if she decides to celebrate her newversary, she's a thoughtful person. Part of what she'll certainly do is look at herself in the mirror and see, how is this year different than last year? And certainly different than 2 years ago when my marriage ended. 20 years down the road, if she's still celebrating her newversary, it's an opportunity to pause, to look, to consider, and to appreciate. It's just another moment along the path. Tamara?
It's certainly not a Jewish ritual, but I heard a story today on NPR from a veteran saying he celebrates his Alive Day. And it was the anniversary each year of the day that he was not killed, but wounded very severely in the war he was serving in. And he wants to appreciate that he's alive and looks back on what he did over that year.
Wow.
And thank all the people who were part of keeping him, doctors and the nurses,
his fellow soldiers, keeping him alive. And I was very.
I love that. So I don't know if you're about to do what I'm about to ask, but after Sharon shares, if anyone else has days that occur to you that either you already note or that you now realize, I think I might want to, and you feel comfortable sharing them, I'd be very interested. That's very cool. The newversary for me was very cool. Down the page a little bit, Julie celebrates her chemoversary. You know, the day that her treatment finally ended. For her, that's really significant. Sharon, what were you going to share?
Very significant car accident in 2016, hit with a friend of his, also named Shannon. And they celebrate their not dead yet anniversary. And that came about from a favorite musical, Spamalot.
Not dead yet.
Yes, so it's a song in Spamalot.
No. That's from Holy Grail, I think.
Right.
Oh.
Yeah.
Thank you.
So she has the T-shirt from the musical, and he and his friend Sharon and I go out to dinner to celebrate.
Oh my God.
Every year.
I love that. My not dead yet versary. Beautiful. Any other examples for us to let me also just mention what happens here. Things like this, all these little examples of do it yourself, they arrive at your brain, something you've never thought of before, and it jogs a new way of thinking. It breaks you out of things like, well, what's traditional? And says, wow, I guess I'm allowed to, and in fact, encouraged to really look hard at myself and my experiences. And what else do I need here? That's a fabulous example. And so is the one you gave us, Tamara. Any others that people want to share? Natalie?
Really little, but just when my fiance and I picked up our dog because that made us a unit. We'll be like it's almost 4 years now, but it is something I think about. It's not just his birthday, but when we picked him up, when he became part of our family, because it completely changed like our lives. Really, it made us like so much closer. I know it's a dog. We all love dogs.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Similarly, families who adopt a child, and it's not the birthday, that too is significant, but the day that our lives changed with the introduction of this person is just like that. Yeah, you bring something full of just love into your lives. Yes, you should mark it. Great example.
Trauma of arts accident, which he was in a coma for. We didn't know if he'd survive or be a vegetable. So that's an anniversary date that we always acknowledge and with gratitude of all the things that had to work out for it to work out. It's just amazing.
Yeah. Yeah. That's great. Yeah. All right. You get the idea, clearly. Couple of, in the next section on the back of the page there, I have a list of things. I think it's on yours too. Actually, I don't know if it's on the back of your page or not. But on my page, it's I've got some other examples of moments in life that we may or may not ritualize enough. And that word enough is not meant to be in any way externally judgmental. Only you know if you did it enough. And so I'm thinking about leaving home for the first time. That might have been headed off to college. Let's just use that as a first one. So you're dropping your kid off at college. It's a huge moment for that kid and for you as parent. And I've heard lots of different stories of what that moment can look like. I don't know if did anybody ever think to kind of do something to ritualize that, Muriel?
College was okay. Taking my child to kindergarten the first time. Yeah, that was tremendous. That was fearful.
That's so perfect.
Excited. And also realizing another phase. So taking them off to college, one and then the other one. just the experience of collecting everything,
Oh,
coming into the house. That was the first time I was really happy I had a dog in the house.
yeah. So the other thing which is good to mention is that when we're in these moments, we're rarely only in the moment. We're also experiencing it in parallel, sometimes multiple parallels. So what I mean by that is sometimes as I'm working with a premarital couple, I will make sure they know that this is not your wedding. Your parents have been waiting a long time for this wedding. It's almost a delayed experience that yes, we stand up there in our dress and in our gown, in our tux or whatever, and we think this is my wedding day. But in many cases, parents are going through it in a very powerful way that we didn't even know about when we were standing there that wedding day, or B'nai Mitzvah, even more so. How many 13-year-olds get excited like apparently my kid? Some do. But the parents of the bar or bat mitzvah, they're the ones who are having a powerful experience. And I'm often sitting there thinking about the grandparents who are sitting in the front row and the multiple removals of that experience they're having. So when you mentioned kindergarten, I'm thinking about how hard that was for us as well. And then I'm remembering the first day of 6th grade for my son. Middle school was traumatic for me. So sending him off on the bus to the first day of 6th grade was traumatic all over again for me. Didn't prove out to be at all the same for him, but we have our own experiences while helping others have theirs. That's a great example. Any other memories of either being dropped off at school or sending your kids off to college or whatever?
Theater was incredibly important to me growing up. I was a theater kid. I did musical theater. I thought it was what I was going to be when I grew up in one way or another. And my daughter did The Wizard of Oz at Curtain Call this year, and seeing her have that whole process, that whole experience of rehearsal and she did. I mean, they ran for like 4 weeks. She was doing multiple performances a week, and watching her have that and see her appreciation for an art form that I love so much. It's just like really hard not to be in like stage mom mode. It's an effort.
So I'm going to crowdsource this. Don't worry about whether your interpretation of Allison's description is what Allison would say, but picturing the situation that she's described, what might you do if you were in her shoes next time to ritualize that? What could we do to stop and make that moment all that it could be?
What did she say?
Sorry, she was talking about watching her daughter in a play, remembering herself in plays growing up, and struggling not to be the stage mom who is imposing her own thoughts on her daughter, but letting her kid have her experiences. Anyone want to brainstorm thoughts? What do you think, Barbara?
Can't think of the specific thing, but to find something to do where together they're acting, you know, I can't think of what it would be. I have to do research, but a one-time thing where you could go together and experience acting together.
Oh, that's great. That's great. To did everyone hear that? To maybe create a scenario where Allison and Elizabeth could act together. That would be very sweet. What else?
Now I know what I wish I'd done. When I was a kid, my dad for Christmas one year got me a ring that was the comedy and tragedy masks. And I remember in that moment feeling so seen and like so understood, that he knew that I would love that and it would be incredibly meaningful to me. And now I wonder if I still have that.
I bet you could find another one.
Yeah.
That's beautiful. So Allison's remembering the ritualization of that moment for her. And if it had happened in that very first moment, cool. The moment's not missed. Yes, exactly. I saw a tradition. It's a stupid tradition, but I'm doing it. I did a bris in Denver, and at the bris, the grandfather, how did this work? The grandfather gave his son an unopened bottle of bourbon. And then the son opened up the bottle of bourbon that had been given to his dad at his own bris. And so I may have gotten that wrong, but at Amitai's bris, I got a bottle of bourbon. And at the bris or naming of whoever has a kid first, at the naming or bris of my first grandkid, we're going to crack that bottle and we're going to get a new bottle for the next generation. Anyway, it's the same goal of trying to tie generation to generation. That's a beautiful example. I was thinking too that in that moment where you're recognizing the urge to be involved as what you call the stage mom, maybe it would be as simple as Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, who separates between my experience and my daughter's experience, or something along those lines. For me, words are powerful. But yeah, what we're doing here is looking for ways to turn a moment that needs something into a moment that has something. It's great. Similarly, moving to a new home. If you know that your kid, let's just stay in that track for a minute, or anyone, if you know that someone is moving into their first new home, what are you going to give them? Mezuzah. What else? Something red.
Salt and bread.
Salt and bread.
Pennies.
And pennies. What else?
You know where the red comes from? My grandmother, who did it to Ward of House.
Yeah. Right. It's the same red that is on the little string bracelets. Somehow the red will shoo away the evil eye. Good.
A hamsa.
A hamsa. Good. A plant. Good.
Now they have a place to grow.
Nice. What's that?
That have root.
Yeah, right. Someplace to literally sink roots. Beautiful.
I always give a berry dish. It's what my mom always had given people.
A berry dish.
Yeah.
That's so cool.
Like it's like the strange, it's got like little holes in the bottom. You know what I'm talking about?
No.
I don't either, but I'm imagining.
And then like a plate underneath.
Yeah.
So it's like a strainer, but
So here's how the joke goes. Amira and Neela grow up watching mom always give berry dishes to their family acquaintances when they get a new home, and they just that's what you do, you know. And as they start growing up, they do the same thing. And just like this, someday someone says to Amira, "Why do you do that?" She says, "I don't know. My mom always does it." And they say, "Well, let's go ask her." And we ask Ellen, why do you give the berry dishes? And Ellen says, "I don't know. My mom always did it." And we go to her and we say, "Why do you always give the berry dishes?" And she said, "Oh, because the first time that we were headed over to someone's housewarming, we needed a gift quick and I didn't have anything. All I had was a regifted berry dish. So I grabbed it, out we went, and it, ever since." It doesn't matter why traditions start or how they start. Traditions are really, really powerful. There's like 17 versions of that joke, by the way. Probably, yeah. My mentor gave me a gift for my wedding that I always thought was really weird until, I don't know, for the first couple of years. He gave us a set of Cutco knives. And I think we still have a couple of them. We've been married 23 years or something, 22 years. And it just feels like 23. I'm kidding. Anyway, I realized that while I thought it was kind of weird at first, every single time I needed to cut something, I'd grab one of the knives and I'd smile. So I always think of like, what kind of gifts can I give that someone's going to remember me each time they use. So things like this are perfect examples. Any other examples before we jump? Yep.
So my grandmother and the sort of other mothers-in-law of my mother's sister, and then that sister's husband's brothers, mother, and all, they all played cards together. And they played pinochle. And when they had all died, my brother started this thing called and they taught all of the kids how to play pinochle. And so he started this annual pinochle party, and we've celebrated more than 30 years doing it. And all of the cousins come together, and we have t-shirts, and we have a trophy. The trophy is handed from house to house, because it has all the years and who won the trophy.
Oh my God.
And then you get a horse's ass if you have the lowest score. And in fourth grade, I think you had to write something about your grandmother or something. And so one of my daughters wrote about the 3 grandmothers who she had never met, who were the original pinochle players, and all about this card party. And, the teacher said, "Is this real? This doesn't make any sense."
Wow.
And so we were just together on September 30th, and there must have been 60 of us.
Oh my God. Wow. That's fabulous. Yeah. That's where you take life and you make it mean something. It's beautiful. It's beautiful. The why is holding our family together. That's a fabulous what or how to hold our family together. Beautiful.
And the winner has to host it next year. So then, so we were in southern New Jersey, we've been in Cape Cod, one cousin in Florida won, but then he got somebody up here to host it. But, so we all do our thing. People
Love it.
came in from Utah,
I'd always want to come in second place, I think.
Yeah.
Okay, couple more just to kind of keep rolling with it. I was thinking about those significant people along the way, and you probably have a couple of folks who guided you. Either it was a teacher, that's what I have. Does yours say teacher on there? I don't know what yours says. Whether you have a significant teacher or a mentor or your first supervisor at work or the guy who owned the house next to your first house who was like 15 years older than you and really taught you how to be a homeowner. I'm not talking from experience. I'm just thinking aloud here. There are people along the way who made a significant imprint upon us, who really affected who we became. And I don't know, there's not always a ritualized way to honor that. We have a set of words, the Kaddish de Rabbanan, the rabbi's Kaddish or the teacher's Kaddish. And it's got some nice words in it, but there are lots of ways that you might find to try to communicate how much this person meant to you. And I'm thinking beyond the little box of chocolates that you give your teacher at the end of the 4th grade year, or the $5 Dunkin' Donuts card that the bus driver gets. I'm thinking about significantly invested examples of how you let someone know that they mattered to you, that their role in your life is appreciated. Has anybody ever seen or done anything that accomplished the goal I'm getting at? Allison?
A college professor of mine, after I'd been in school for a few years, and thanked her for her investment in me. And I don't remember the context, but there was something going on in the world that I understood much better because of my relationship with her and the courses that I did.
That's great. Sharon?
After my younger daughter came back from March of the Living, and she was talking to me about it, and what an incredible opportunity and life-changing trip that was for her.
Yes.
And she had had an opportunity to either go with BBYO or with Betsy Stone. And I told her, you can only go with Betsy Stone, you cannot go with BBYO. She was not thrilled with me, ultimately she was. I am not someone who likes to write. I wrote an incredible thank you note to Betsy, and she was not anybody that I knew at the time.
Has anybody received a communication like this from somebody? You have, Ellen?
Just cards and from previous students and patients in my practice. And well, I think the one call them meaningful and actually save them for when I have my own like self-doubts and need that little reading. But I think the ones like I'm just thinking of one in particular that came many years after the fact.
Those are
I don't
cool.
know if you remember me, but
Yeah, those are cool. Moira and I have talked about this before too. I have a folder on in my email system that I titled "Unadulterated Praise," and every once in a while, I get a really thoughtfully written note, and yeah, I just touched by it, and I hold on to it so I can find it later when I need it. Yeah, Tamara.
passed away, I put together a memory book for her and I reached out to, friends, but also her colleagues. And my mother was an attorney and also some of her people she needed help. And my mother had died pretty kind of unexpectedly. And a lot of people told me afterwards that the ability to write a note and say something about how I had asked people like, how did my mother touch your life? How she touched them, that they found it very cathartic. And
Wow.
receiving it and putting it together, and then I shared the book with friends. That just reading it, we all learned something new. I thought I knew my mother, and it was like, oh my gosh, I didn't know some of the things she had accomplished and how she had touched other people's lives. So I think both the people receiving it and the people writing it really is kind of a transformative experience.
So on your sheet, if you jump down to the death section and this first subsection, somewhere on the line there, it says telling stories at the intake. Do you see where I'm there? So what I was referring to was when someone passes and we've got a funeral 2 days later, and we've got it all organized. I say, I'll come over at 3 p.m. tomorrow, the day before the funeral. Gather as many folks as you want to be there. And we do effectively what you just described. And telling stories, it's remarkable how often they'll say to me afterwards, we did not realize how important this was going to be, heard stories about dad that we'd never heard before. Those are really powerful moments. And it's so easy for me to facilitate that unexpected, meaningful moment. I really appreciate that. Yeah. Okay, I'm going to keep going. I'm just going to run through the list here. So communicating to teachers is so meaningful. At the moment of death, we've got all kinds of traditions, but not all of these are the ones that are somehow written into the book, so to speak. So I'm just going to put it out here because these are important things for you to think about now. If you haven't already, they will help you feel at ease, and they will make the lives of your loved ones so much easier. So if you're talking about decisions ahead of time, and we'll do a little bit about this in the crash course on death or whatever I called it in the spring, but making decisions ahead of time, making sure people know what you want ahead of time. That's a ritualized moment for you to articulate what kind of death do you want, and it matters. Thinking about organ donation and whether or not that's a value that's close to your heart or not, so to speak. How important would it be to you to donate your body to science? These are kinds of questions you might ask. I'd encourage you to be thinking about hospice. What does hospice mean to you? And if you don't know enough about it, come talk to me. Because if you can say to your loved ones now, when it's time, don't wait, bring in hospice. It will totally change the whole dynamic of that last chapter of your life. So often people, if they even make hospice at all, they're on hospice for 36 hours and they die. Ideally, hospice, if it all worked right, should be 4 weeks or 6 weeks or something. In that time, once you say to everybody, we've brought in hospice, it's like saying no one's pretending anymore. We know that the end is coming, and now we can speak truthfully. No one has to dance around the fact that we're not hoping for miracles anymore. And the depth of that experience can be made much more potent if everyone's open about what's really happening. Inviting the rabbi to visit. It just doesn't happen that often. I don't know when our tradition stopped being to give the rabbi a call. But I know that there are families who I could have been a meaningful part of that piece of the journey. When you invited me to come meet Al, that meant so much to me and probably to Al to know that this guy who's going to be burying him will have some face to put to the name. And
Just now was really so helpful to me because I brought in hospice and I asked Al about it. And I questioned whether I did the right thing so many times and thinking back over certain things, and you just crystallized it. You do better than I did.
Yeah. I have more thoughts that I want to share, but not at the moment. Vidui. Vidui is sort of like what we do on Yom Kippur. A vidui is a confession. So when we're doing the Asham news or the Al Chet Shechatanus, those are the vidui that we do on Yom Kippur. There's a vidui for the end of life. It'd be nice if the last thing you can say is, ideally, if you could look people in the eye and say, I know that I've probably hurt you. I know some of the things I did that hurt you. There must be so many other things that I don't even realize I did that hurt you. I beg your forgiveness. And for anything that you might have done that upset me, I forgive you. Please know that I did my best. And I'd like to be released in peace. For someone to be able to say something like that, whether it's using traditional formats or not, is a cool opportunity. And very often when I come in and I do the final vidui for somebody, they're already unconscious, but their loved ones are bawling next to me because it's as if I'm speaking the words for that loved one. These are do-it-yourself moments where we say, there's still stuff that has to be said. And even if the person is no longer verbal, there's something potent about trying to make the most of those moments. When a person dies, there's a tradition of lighting a candle right up near their head and opening the window. These are Bubba Misas. You know this one? Yeah. Oh, you did good. So the candle is just to represent the soul, and opening the window is to let the soul have egress more easily. But you may know that you can't open windows in hospitals very often, if at all, and you sure as hell can't light candles. So we figure out a way to do it. When I bring in 2 of these for someone sitting in the, in the hospital, Grant, do you guys do these? Are they in there? Giving someone Shabbos candles who's going to be stuck there over the weekend. It's such a simple little thing. Or you know that someone's going to be passing soon and you give one of these to their loved ones, say, when they die, just put it up near, the head of the bed and just turn it on. Doesn't do anything. Not a thing. But it's tradition. It's just another one of those moments where we give back something mechanical that gives us something to do when our hands need something to do, when we feel otherwise uncertain. This grants us just a little bit of structure. I'm not going to go through all the others, but I will say one more thing on this section here that we're in right now. One of the next ones is eulogies. And some of you have heard me say this, that there has been, not just anything I've done, but I've been part of this trend of handing the eulogies back to family members rather than me sitting at the intake and taking furious notes and then delivering a eulogy, which I do a lot of the time. And sometimes I do it in addition to families' eulogies. But very often, once we're sitting there and stories are pouring out, people who had no intention of delivering a eulogy now say, maybe I actually would like to talk. And I assure them that that's fabulous. You'll go first so that any of the stories we just heard at this intake, I don't steal. The stories should come from you, not from me. So, if I have stuff I want to say here, and I'm hearing you go before me and you tell this story and that story and this story, fine. I can pretty quickly on the fly adjust, but it's so much better for you if you do it yourself. Do it yourself funerals are magic. When we put the shovel in your hand, when we put the words on your tongue, it is like handing back to you the mechanics of something that is yours. It is taking it out of the hands of the professional. And I'm only a professional because people grew insecure about their ability to do these things. They needn't feel that way. I'll make sure you do it all, according to the traditions if you want that. But I love re-empowering people to do this stuff. And then this section too is under the section of death. But I said, what's missing from our traditions? That first Thanksgiving after you lose a loved one, what do you do there? Do you leave a chair at the table empty? Do you fill a glass to be, unemptied? Do you simply take a moment of silence? Do you do nothing? Maybe you do nothing. Uh-huh.
My mother, my father, others who've died, my brother-in-law's brother.
It's perfect. Let's do it yourself Thanksgiving. Love it. Love it. First wedding anniversary after their loss, their birthdays, your birthdays, all these moments. Sometimes you've heard me describe it as like a scab, right? In the days after the loss of someone close, it hurts. It's a raw, open wound. And over the next week or 2 or 4 or 10, it starts to change. The pain changes. The wound scabs over a little bit. And then you get to Thanksgiving or their birthday or your anniversary, and whoop, you just rip the scab right off. And it heals again a little more quickly. But boy, it just keeps getting brought back up. Do we have rituals where we want to take a moment and celebrate those? If you and your wife always went out to have a glass of wine, or you had your favorite restaurant, it was your anniversary restaurant. Do you keep going back after they die and ordering the same bottle of wine that you always did? I don't know. Maybe that's a ritual that has to come to an end. Maybe you say, I'm never again going to drink that wine. That was something I only did with her, or whatever. You get the idea. There's all kinds of ways to think through what's the why. The why is I feel a loss. The what and the how, whatever you want. It's up to you. Yeah, I'm just going to look at a few more. I put a link here, and in the email, it's a live link, but there's 2 links here, I think, to Ritual Well. Again, this is just a great website. Quickly, here, I can do it like this. So here's the sheet you have. So I'm going to go to so here's an example. I'm going to share this for folks at home. Okay, Judy, are you able to see that all right? So here's the ritual. This is a ritual for somebody who recognizes that I need something to create a distinction between my work self and my family self. And so here's just a little example. Who wrote this one? Adva Chatler and 2 other people. So, the ritual item here, this describes the why. The ritual item in this case is something smelly. Could be potpourri, or here it's a satchel of herbs. Could be a hand cream, could be your coffee, could be a scented candle. At the beginning of the workday, either you're at home, or you're in the car, in the parking lot at work, or you're in your office, whatever it is, it's like Havdalah, separating between the me that was and the me that now needs to be. You take a deep breath, you inhale the smell of whatever you've chosen, and then you go about your day. At the end of the day, same kind of thing. You close your electronics, you pause, you take a deep breath, you take out that object, you close your eyes, you think of something that went well for you that day. Don't dwell on what didn't go right. Take a few breaths, be present, let go of your responsibilities as worker, and just be, and then take a breath, offer gratitude for your own abilities and for something larger. And maybe you want to say something like, in this moment, I lay down my burdens, thankful for all that helps me carry them each day. Now, I am more ready to lift up and be lifted up by what comes next. And take a big smell of your candle or coffee or whatever it is. I only offer it as the kind of example we've been talking about. There was a why, and someone created a how or a what. Did any of you take a few minutes and go to ritualwell.org? Anyone played around there? Did you? It's an amazing site. It's remarkable. Ritual Well. Yeah, like you go to the well to find, to find life-giving water. Ritual Well. And it's a fun place to go and peruse. You'll find great stuff there. Another example was on Ritual Well for what you do at the end of your career. When you reach the moment of retirement, what is the ritual that you use to close out not just a work day, but a career? It's not like tomorrow morning I'm going to get back up and go back to the office. This is the last time I'm leaving the office. That's a pretty profound moment in an individual's journey. There's nothing in Judaism that really gives us the framework for marking that. So someone wrote a ritual. Actually, there's lots of them up there. Okay, I'm going to keep going. How are we doing on time? Yeah, we're getting close on time. The next section is about learning. And here I just want to pause and emphasize for a couple of moments that as a people of the book, there is something very profound about not being satisfied with where we are at the moment. Each of us is on a journey, and there are moments of greater growth slopes and moments where we flatten out a little bit. But when we feel like we're growing, life becomes vibrant. And so the more that you can create those moments, all of this falls into that category, but learning is an opportunity to very intentionally go out and craft that experience where you come home after a class. Natalie and I were just talking about this earlier today. You come home after a class and you feel like you're now the owner of another piece of understanding. That's huge. When you take that and you build on it at the next session, oh my God. It's kind of what we're doing here tonight. Think about the way that you came into my session 2 classes ago, what you thought you were going to be getting compared to what we ended up doing. After all this conversation now, I think for most of you, blasted out the walls that you had lived in for some time and challenged you to think a little bit more creatively about how to approach this stuff. So I think on your sheet, I gave you a couple of examples. But there's great learning resources out there. So the ones that I suggested were the website My Jewish Learning. Terrific basic information on everything. Everything in one place, written by people who live their Judaism with similar mentality to the way you do. Chabad is also a powerful website, but they're starting from a different place. They have a different why. My Jewish Learning is going to be somebody who experiences the world more the way you do. So just, you got a question about something? This is effectively Rabbi Google. You can call me, by all means, do it, but then check my work and see if I agreed with what they said. I suggested that you could commit to a learning process. All the time I have people say to me, I want to learn more about Jewish mysticism or Hebrew or liturgy or history or whatever. That's terrific. There's endless examples out there now. So I gave a couple of examples. The Musar Institute, near and dear to Moira's heart. There's all these wonderful classes that are many of them asynchronous. They've already happened for very reasonable price. You can register and go back and you can, at your own pace, learn a new concept Jewishly. Institute for Jewish Spirituality. This has been the most impactful organization that I've experienced Jewishly. And as a rabbi, this has really transformed my whole understanding of Jewish beliefs and practice. This is where I learned do-it-yourself Judaism. This is where they almost broke me. HUC-JIR, the Hebrew Union College, Jewish Institute of Religion, is the Reform Seminary. This is where they change uneducated young adults into slightly more educated, less young adults, and then they call us rabbi or cantor. But anyway, they've got a huge catalog of community ed programs. The 92nd Street Y, Makor in the city, Pardes in Jerusalem. There are so many good examples that you can access out there. Many of them are free, but all of them are really high quality opportunities for you to go out and say, I need something more, and I'm gonna make it happen. And if you want some partnership and thinking through the options that might meet your needs, come talk to me. I can rattle off 10 good ideas, prioritized with the order I think you are going to want them. So I can save you a little bit of the flapping around. That said, I also wanted to mention that it's been happening more and more and more lately. And by lately, I mean in the last month or two or three, maybe, that I'm hearing people describe the desire for a more ongoing, deeper adult ed experience. And so it's been a bunch of years since we ran an adult B'nai Mitzvah class, but I think that this coming next year, I'm going to launch another one. Maybe it'll be a circle, who knows, doesn't matter. But we're going to take a lot of time to do it. So if you're feeling like, you know what, I want to jump into another process of learning, it's not about the outcome. It's not about whether or not you celebrate in this service at the end or not. In fact, someone registered for the last class, which has got to be now 6 years ago. And she said, I'm not going to be in the service. I'm just along for the ride. I want the learning. I'm not going to do the ceremony. Wonderful. Wonderful. That's great. And then one more example. I know how much this community is driven by the sense of obligatory service. We are not content to just go out there and rake in as much wealth and privilege for ourselves as we can. This community gets out there with their hands dirty and makes the world better. And so I love when it happens through Sinai. As individuals, what would it mean if you're going to New Covenant Center to serve lunch and you pull into the parking lot, and every time you do that, you pull into the parking lot, before you get out of the car, you say a blessing. Maybe it goes like this. It sounds like, Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, who has implanted in me the need to go out and celebrate other humans' divinity through service. I don't know, I just made it up. Finding some way when you go to deliver bags at the hospital on Shabbat, before you enter the building, or when the group of you is together on the main floor, you gather around your little cart and you all sort of acknowledge what we're about to do is God's work. Our hands are God's hands. What a way of taking something which is right, and you're going to do anyway, and turning it into a Jewish moment. Or what if you were to say, when I get together for packing bags of dignity for women who are unhoused, I do this in memory of my grandmother. Maybe that she would have so approved of this kind of thing. Or, I don't know, you had a child who died very young and never was able to celebrate life. And so now when you go to the hospital and you visit, I don't know, the ill, you pause beforehand and you say, L'shem Jonathan, whatever his name was, in honor of or for the sake of his memory. If you imbue your service in memory of or honor of someone, that's a very common thing. Also, similarly, there's the tradition of learning in someone's memory. Often in traditional communities, when someone's father passes away, again, we're in the patriarchy, so forgive the male domination of this whole thing, but they'll say, I'm going to learn all of Mishnah in his memory. I'm going to, or let's all take a Mishnah and learn it so that all together this community completes the whole thing in his memory. The point being, the why is I want to find another way to make my father's memory significant. The how is learning. Yeah. And then I'll do just one more from here. Okay. So the other thing I was going to share with you was this notion of Maimonides' 8 degrees of tzedakah. Have you come across this teaching before? Okay. So Maimonides said, giving is good. Tzedakah doesn't mean charity. Charity is from the Latin word caritas, love. We don't do our good works because we love other people. We do it because they are tzedek. They are right. They are righteous. And so Maimonides said, okay, good. We know that you have to do righteous things, but not all righteousness is created equal. And so he created what he called the ladder of tzedakah. So the first level is giving sourly with an irritation on your face. You know, it's the guy on the street who says, can I get a little help here? And you're like, you know, you're making him feel like garbage while you're giving him whatever you're about to. The second level is giving, but not enough. You know, someone says, can I get a little help here? And you reach in your pocket and you pull out a nickel. Actually, you pull out a nickel, 3 dimes and a quarter, and you pull the nickel out of the middle and you give it to them. Okay, that's the next level. It's better than this. You know, at least you don't have a sour puss, right? Better than that is giving after he asks. You're walking down the street, you see the guy over there. As you get closer, you're thinking, oh, please don't ask, please don't ask, please don't ask. And you say, hey, can I get a little help? And you're like, you reach in there, you give him $1, whatever, right? That's better. Better than that is when you give straight to the poor before he even asks. You're walking down the street, he looks like he's, you know, slumbering or whatever, otherwise focused, and you've got your food from the restaurant you just exited or whatever. You've got your power bars that you bring to the city for this purpose, and you walk up to him and say, hey brother, looks like it's a rough day. Here, here's a little treat for you. Okay, that's better. Better than that, though, is when the giver doesn't know who he gave to, even if the poor person knows who it's coming from. So it would be like, I know this is kind of maybe you can think of a better example than this, but it is, I'm not thinking of a good example. Yeah, Scott, thank you for saving me.
I think I'm going down the path you're looking at, but it reminds me of a bone marrow donation which we've had in our family. And there was someone who was a match for my cousin, and he wanted to give to my cousin, and the protocols of the bone marrow donation is you don't give to a person, you give to the cause, and the cause decides where it's needed most.
No. Okay. Yeah, we're getting there in a second. This is a case where I say I have $1,000 to give to the needy, and I hand it to Moira and I say, will you take care of this for me? And then I walk out the door, and Moira knows that Art is needy. And so she gives some of that money or all of that money to Art. I don't know that Art got it, but Art knows that it came from Jay. Okay. So it's It's one-way blindness. Okay. Better than that, though, is when the giver knows who he gave to, but the poor person doesn't know where it's coming from. So that's me coming over and saying, Moira, Art is really struggling. Would you give him this $1,000 for me? And then I scoot away. And Moira says, an anonymous donor has given this gift to you, Art. And Art is looking around going, who do I thank? Right? We've saved the shame for Art of having to know who his benefactor is. Better than that is Scott's example, where the giver doesn't know where it's going and the poor doesn't know where it came from. That is the bone marrow registry. That is the rabbi's discretionary fund, because you give to the fund knowing that I'll take care of getting it where it needs to go. That recipient doesn't know it came from you. Or if I've sent you a check, you don't know where it came from. Okay, that's the two-directional blindness, double blindness. And anyone know what number one is, the best? What could be better than this?
Teaching the person how to.
What did you say, Grant?
Both know.
That they both know where it goes? Oh, that's interesting. Not exactly. That would have been this one and this one and this one. I mean, that's where they both see where the money's coming from and going. Maybe you could give plenty or more than is needed with a smiley face, but actually Barbara's on the right path. So Maimonides says the best way to handle tzedakah is to teach him to be self-sufficient, giving him the loan, giving him the means to a livelihood so that he won't have to ask for charity anymore. Effectively, you're giving back this individual her self-respect. So the reason, give me half a second, Muriel, and then I'll come to you. The reason I wanted to share this as a closing set of slides is because this is about choosing your behavior as a do-it-yourself opportunity. This is you walking down the street in New York City. This is you hearing about an earthquake in Afghanistan. This is you having someone tell you about their friend in Israel who needs body armor. This is about you realizing that you're not always your best self. When you're too busy and hurrying to your appointment and someone is bothering you by asking for some help. Every one of these situations has a personal engagement not at stake, available. We get to decide how we enter the world. And so if you decide, I want to be the highest example of myself as often as possible, then do it yourself. Judaism means walking through the world looking to be, more often than not up near the top of the way we behave with each other. That makes sense? Yeah. Oh, I can't. There it is. Okay, I'm going to switch back so we can see Judy. Muriel, what were you going to add?
Not everybody can do number one because you don't have the ability, but I also think that giving, you're not giving because you're looking for yourself to feel, hey, I did terrific, I gave. You're giving because it's like in your soul. You're just giving it without looking for recognition.
Yeah. Many of you know Mark Becker. He's one of our congregants. He's in the Saturday morning Bible study group. He's just a really great guy with a great sense of humor. And he'll always very humbly point out that on those big walls of all the donors or in the newsletter where it's got just all those lists of givers, all the anonymous are all him. He's really funny about it. Yeah. Those are all me. Okay. So yes, Sharon. Yeah.
There's a little bit of judgment that comes into that, and
I think it would need to be a personal relationship in order to successfully meet that goal and not make the other feel shame or whatever it is.
Yeah.
Just
Yeah. There's a couple of great songs that occur to me. There's one, I don't remember what it's called. I actually think I do know what it's called. It's called Underpants Go on the Outside. Or Underpants on the Outside or something like that. I'll send you a link. It's really pretty funny, but it's about how judgmental we all are about the homeless and the mentally ill. And the musician is singing about how people always tell the poor to get away from me, you bum. You know, you ask for change, you're just going to use it for drugs or alcohol. And the artist says, that's what I'm going to use it for. And so he's encouraging us to have a lot of compassion for the other who is so different from ourselves. And I think you're absolutely right. It is very pretentious for us to think we know what the other needs and to step in and say, here, let me help you with what I think is going to be right for you.
Recognizing that person needs might be what we need. And it's not like I'm giving you this.
Yeah.
It's recognizing it and
Yeah.
that person needs help.
Correct.
But for example, I recently hired a person who has a computer science degree. I'm in Seattle, and he is on a wheelchair. He has a cerebral palsy, but his brain is brilliant. Not many people give him the opportunity and hire him. I did.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I gave him the opportunity, and he excelled beyond my expectations.
Yeah.
So
You're saying
the opportunity, not necessarily giving.
Yeah, that's great.
That because that person is lower than you.
Right.
Does that make any sense?
It makes a lot of sense. I think what you're saying is exactly what Sharon said, which is the first step in creating relationship is seeing the other person. Really seeing them. Yeah. Yeah.
The brilliant person who was really successful.
Right. Exactly. So here's what I think Temple Sinai has going for it. I think we have a remarkable group of people who are open-minded enough and serious enough about ourselves as full beings, and who understand that living a life with meaning is invaluable. And we found ourselves at Sinai for a host of different reasons. But if you're still sitting in this room on session 3, it means that this way of thinking interests you. And Temple Sinai has shown a great, thriving, demonstrative success because we're open-minded. We're willing to look around and see, well, what is this? And before shutting it down, say, is there any value here? It's why you let me bring goats on Yom Kippur, on Rosh Hashanah. It's why, I don't know. I don't think of it. I can think of other examples, but point being, when we open up circles, people say, I get a lot of meaning out of this. I imagine there are others who do as well. Let's offer it and see if anyone shows up. And this year we have 28, 26, whatever it is, a lot of circles, 28 circles with 28 individuals, actually a few more than that because there's a couple of doubles, all leading a group for others. They're all happening, they're all viable for other people who want to share in that experience of meaning. So I want you to just know that you're in great company with others who are looking to make their lives as deep and meaningful as possible, being full participants in the experience. And when tradition guides and supports us, wonderful. When it doesn't, it gets a vote, but not a veto. And do-it-yourself Judaism means making it your own. And if you ever want to partner in doing so, I volunteer. Any closing thoughts or questions or requests? Grant asked if I would send the page with all the blessings on it. I have my note here to do so after the class.
It's an observation that every single activity often takes the format of a group discussion where we're learning from each other. And I think whether it's a fun thing like cinema or a serious thing like Bible study or it's the same experience of learning from each other's wisdoms and looking into our own.
Yeah. And that's why one of my least favorite moments of the year are my high holiday sermons, because there's no interplay. It's just me telling you what I want you to hear. There are not a lot of lectures at Temple Sinai. And what happened here tonight? I mean, the series is Do-It-Yourself Judaism. Everybody rolled up their hands. I heard from every one of you, and it was a beautiful outcome. So thank you very much.
I think we had a good reader.
And thank you, Judy. Oh, I think she's already gone. I heard you, whoever said that. Thank you, Muriel.
Serving as a superintendent.
Yes. So when you get back in the car, you feel great about it. Just pause and go. To the universe, say, you're welcome, or thank you. Whatever, you're getting more out of it, maybe you have to say thank you. Thank you for the opportunity.
And the fact that the synagogue folk volunteer. This really says so much to me. So why we're so happy to be here.
It makes me awfully proud, no question about that.